To the same story, tax revenue due to the ban on cigarette trade has contributed to a weaker collection. But that's not all. There's been a loss to business 4 months down the line. Tobacco farmers are also battling left without income. Johnny Moloto, the head of external affairs at British American Tobacco, talks to us now about the impact of the lockdown. Mr. Moloto, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with perhaps the loss that you have incurred since the beginning of the lockdown. Do you have those numbers at your disposal?
Thanks very much, Tumelo. If we look at just contributions, maybe that's the better way of positioning it, because both ourselves and the state are losing in this regard. The state is losing about 35 million rands a day, which translates to about plus minus 1.3, 1.4 billion a month. And thus far, we are edging closer to the 4 billion mark that has been lost since the ban started. So that's quite a significant amount. That's just on excise. We ourselves, the losses are incalculable, given that we have not been trading since the 27th of March, with the exception when in April, a limited amount of trade was allowed through exports. And that is just about 30% of our business, which on its own, if you calculate the cost, isn't much really, given that you have the bulk of our employees not able to work. So you're not actually able to earn anything, yet your costs have not reduced. You're still incurring the same costs that you incur in any normal month.
Right, and this also obviously while the illicit and illegal trade of tobacco continues in the country.
Amazing statistics out of that. You know, just before the lockdown, illicit trade was standing at 35%. Right now it's 100%. So every cigarette sold in the market, it's obviously a cigarette that is not duty paid. So these are all illicit cigarettes that are actually not making any money for the fiscus. So you can imagine the losses are just unbelievable, all for something that could have been easily done through consultation with the industry. And we, together with government, just like other industries, were consulted and were able to find ways in which we can both achieve the objectives of actually complying with the lockdown, while at the same time making sure that we protect jobs and livelihoods. So it's been really quite the illicit trade. These are the only people making money in the economy at this moment.
Mr. Moloto, according to your court papers, you also talk about how the entire value chain is affected. And I just want to put the spotlight now on, the economic rights of, farmers as well as manufacturers at this time. How have they been negatively impacted?
So when it comes to farmers, if we just look at the gross value added that the farmers provide, you're looking at about just over R1 billion a year that they contributed in 2019. Right now, the losses that they are making are incalculable, because even though they were allowed to sell as part of the overall agricultural industry, the fact is that we are the market that they sell to, and the fact that ourselves were not able to sell cigarettes means that they have no market. And this is their only source of product that they are selling now. This is their only source of livelihood that they are sitting on. So if they are not able to trade, already we are estimating just across the value chain since the lockdown began, in excess of the total 296,000 jobs, we're looking at about 30,000 jobs already lost. And Tumelo, most of these jobs will never return. And the longer the ban continues, the more jobs will be lost. And unfortunately, these are people, all their lives, all they've done was to do tobacco farming. So the options for them are very, very limited to non-existent in terms of going forward with this ban.
Now, that's a bitter pill right there to swallow. Hearing you say that most of the job losses that you've incurred as, a company, as industry, will not return. But how have you been sustaining yourselves right now as industry? I understand that still this case, or rather matter, is still appearing before the courts. But how have you been then sustaining yourselves?
It's been very, very, very tough. We've had to leverage all resources that we have just to ensure that we protect livelihoods. No business can sustain itself for this long without earning. So it's been a very, very, very tough one. And this is something that we have said to government, just put faces behind the numbers. Don't just look at the cold hard numbers and just say that, all other industries are equally impacted. I think what makes it even more painful for our industry is the fact that in spite of numerous appeals, letters that we've written, submissions we've written, we are probably one of the few industries that government never bothered to consult or respond to. And this is the plight of ordinary South Africans, hard-working South Africans that have been reduced now either to destitute or hopelessness. And if we look at our employees themselves, very anxious, quite a stressful period, because they themselves are very cognizant of the fact that the longer this ban continues, the more it also threatens their livelihoods. We look at our customers. Some businesses have shut down because they were solely selling tobacco products, nothing else. So they were not able to sustain themselves over this period. We look at our consumers now. These are ordinary South Africans who have now been reduced to criminality because they now have to resort to actually engaging in shady transactions of trying to secure tobacco products from very unscrupulous dealers who are, pricing the product out of the affordability.
Right.
And to add to that, then we have law enforcement authorities, instead of focusing on real meaningful crimes like gender-based violence, are now chasing ordinary South Africans who are trying to find their daily fix.
All right, this way we'll leave you, but thank you so much for talking to us and highlighting this issue, Mr. Johnny Molota from British American Tobacco.